They trained for years, risked their lives, and left Earth behind to explore the unknown. But some of them came back, different, not because of the silence, not because of the darkness, but because of what they saw and what they were told to forget. These are the stories NASA doesn't want you to hear. Stories whispered in interviews, hidden in old recordings and shared on forums before they mysteriously disappeared. I'm Disturbing Jack, and this is what NASA won't tell you about space. On July 20th, 1969, the world held its breath as Neil Armstrong stepped off the lunar module and into history. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," he said, a phrase forever etched into our collective memory. But what most people don't know is that for nearly 2 minutes during the broadcast, NASA's feed went silent. The live connection to Earth was mysteriously interrupted. Officially, it was a technical glitch, but whispers inside the agency tell a different story, a story that was never meant to reach the public. According to leaked transcripts and retired NASA insiders, Armstrong saw something on the moon that he wasn't prepared for, and that no one has been allowed to speak about publicly. Shortly after descending the ladder of the lunar module, Armstrong allegedly switched to a secure communication channel with NASA Mission Control. These medical channels were meant for personal health updates, but they also served another purpose: to relay sensitive information without public broadcast. What did he say? "They're here. They're watching us." This transmission, supposedly intercepted by a group of amateur radio operators in Australia, described large metallic structures on the edge of the Sea of Tranquility. Armstrong is said to have described them as being not man-made, symmetrical and towering above the horizon like monoliths. Some claimed the objects reflected light unnaturally, as if absorbing sunlight rather than bouncing it back. Others said they looked like machines that weren't turned on. When Armstrong returned to Earth, he was noticeably different. Close friends said he became withdrawn, quiet. He refused most interviews and avoided any discussion of the moon landing in depth. Buzz Aldrin, his fellow astronaut, also grew more erratic in the years following the mission, battling depression and alcoholism. In one unguarded moment during an interview, Aldrin said, "There are things up there. We weren't the first." NASA, of course, has always denied these claims. Any talk of alien encounters is dismissed as conspiracy theory or science fiction. But the files that support this story continue to circulate in classified forums and among former NASA employees who have nothing left to lose. One document, dated 1973, reportedly details a NASA contingency plan in the event of non-human contact during lunar missions. It outlines protocol for the immediate suppression of information, rerouting of communications, and psychological assessment of the crew. The mere existence of such a document is chilling. And then there's the footage, a grainy black and white clip, supposedly recovered from an unreleased reel of Apollo 11 film, shows Armstrong standing motionless on the moon's surface. In the distance, faint shapes appear beyond a ridge, too symmetrical, too precise to be rocks. One of them moves slightly. The footage ends abruptly. Skeptics argue it's doctored, but those who've seen it in full say it's nothing like the official footage, and far more terrifying. Over the years, multiple insiders have stepped forward only to retract their statements after sudden visits from government officials. One of the more credible accounts came from Maurice Chatelain, a former chief of NASA Communications Systems, who claimed in a 1979 interview, Armstrong did report seeing 2 UFOs on the rim of a crater. The encounter was common knowledge at NASA. To this day, NASA refuses to comment. but some believe the truth is hidden in plain sight. In 2009, Armstrong gave a rare speech at the White House for the 40th anniversary of Apollo 11. At the end of his talk, he said something cryptic. "There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers." Was that a hint? Was he trying to tell us something without breaking whatever vow of silence was forced upon him? Maybe we'll never know. But if Armstrong really did see something on the moon, something not of this Earth, it would explain the silence, the secrecy, and the sudden technical glitches during humanity's greatest broadcast. Maybe we weren't supposed to go to the moon. Or maybe we were warned not to come back. In 2003, China launched its first manned space mission. Aboard the Shenzhou 5 spacecraft was Lieutenant Colonel Yang Liwei, a highly trained military pilot and national hero. He was alone, orbiting Earth at over 27,000 kilometers per hour, over 340 kilometers above the surface. His mission? A solo 21-hour flight to demonstrate China's entry into the elite club of human space exploration. For the first several hours, everything proceeded normally. Yang monitored flight systems, performed routine checks, and spoke to mission control. He floated in the capsule, weightless, his body adapting to microgravity. From his viewport, the Earth was a glowing sphere of blues and whites. The silence of space, broken only by the hum of onboard electronics, wrapped him in isolation. Then he heard it. Knock. A sharp, clear sound, as if someone had tapped the exterior of the spacecraft with a hammer. Yang paused. In space, sound doesn't travel. There is no air, no medium for vibration to move through. You cannot hear something knocking from the outside. Yet the sound was unmistakable. He unstrapped himself and floated to the hull, placing his ear against the inner surface. Nothing. Then again. Knock, knock. 3 times. Hollow, deliberate, as if from a knuckle or wooden mallet striking metal. He checked the instruments. No pressure loss, no alarms. He contacted mission control and calmly reported the sound. They told him it was likely thermal expansion, the spacecraft's structure adjusting to the extreme temperature changes in orbit. But Yang had trained for this. He had heard those kinds of creaks and groans in simulations. This wasn't it. This was rhythmic, like communication. And then it came again, louder, closer. Knock, knock, knock. This time he felt the vibration in his boots. He drifted to the window, searching for any sign of movement. A tool floating? Debris? Nothing. Just Earth far below and the cold, black ocean of space all around. Then he saw it. Just at the edge of his vision, something moved. A shadow like heat waves over asphalt, distorting the stars behind it. For a second, he thought it was the curvature of the glass or a smudge. But it shifted position, moved left, then disappeared. No form, no face, just distortion like a cloak wrapped around something. That night he didn't sleep. Yang kept hearing the knocks every few hours, always in sets of 3. Sometimes they came from the side, sometimes from the airlock. At one point he said the knocks were beneath him, from the bottom of the capsule. When he finally returned to Earth, technicians examined the spacecraft thoroughly. They found no damage, no signs of micrometeoroid impact, no abnormal readings. But Yang privately told CNSA scientists that he felt watched during the flight. The official report simply lists anomalous acoustic events, chalked up to structural stress. But then something strange happened. Astronauts aboard Shenzhou 6 and 7 who were never told about Yang's knocking reported the exact same sound. Same pattern, same spot. One of them, a younger taikonaut, allegedly panicked and refused to sleep for the final 12 hours of the mission. The logs say he experienced auditory hallucinations. Unofficial sources say otherwise. One technician who worked on post-flight analysis claimed that the audio logs recorded something even more chilling. Just after one of the knocks, the onboard mic picked up what sounded like a human breath, a single inhale, raspy, mechanical, too long to be human. It was dismissed as background static, but the file disappeared weeks later. There's also a rumor, never confirmed, that Yang's heart rate monitor showed sudden spikes at random intervals during the mission, even when he was supposedly asleep, as if he was waking up suddenly in fear. But he never reported nightmares. He only reported the knocking. Years later, Yang was asked at a press conference if he ever experienced anything strange in space. He smiled politely and said, "There are things I cannot explain, and things I have chosen not to remember." The knock is now a kind of whispered legend among Chinese space crews. Some laugh it off. Others claim it's real, that something not human circles Earth at a slightly higher orbit. Silent, watching, waiting, and every so often, Sonny, it wants to come in. One cosmonaut, after hearing this story, reportedly refused to sleep alone during his own mission on the ISS. He claimed to have heard faint tapping sounds from the Russian segment. He told ground control, "It sounds like someone is checking the seal from the outside." NASA has remained silent on similar events, but privately several astronauts have spoken of odd sounds, clicking, whispers, strange rhythmic impacts. Always at night, always when they were alone. Maybe it's the stress, maybe it's the isolation, or maybe, just maybe, we are not alone up there. And whatever is knocking is patient. In June 1965, NASA launched Gemini 4, the mission that would make Ed White the first American to walk in space. It was hailed as a success, a turning point in the space race. But there's a part of that mission no one ever talks about. A stretch of time that disappeared from the logs, the tapes, and the interviews, and those who know why either aren't talking or aren't around to talk. Ed White and James McDivitt launched into orbit aboard a capsule barely big enough to fit 2 men. The mission was supposed to last 4 days, testing endurance, maneuverability, and human adaptability. Everything began normally. The first orbit was smooth, communications clear, spirits high. On the second day, White performed the historic EVA, spacewalk, floating outside the capsule tethered by an umbilical line, marveling at the Earth. His voice was light, excited. "I'm glad I got out here," he said. "It's the saddest moment of my life. I'm coming back in." Those were his last words over public comms. Then something strange happened. NASA's official records show a brief loss of signal, about 30 minutes of garbled data and partial audio. But internal documents, later leaked through whistleblowers and redacted FOIA requests, suggest something much longer. One memo mentions a full 1 hour and 47 minutes of non-recoverable telemetry. The official explanation? A temporary malfunction in the onboard recording system. Unofficially? That window of silence is when everything went wrong. According to a retired mission control tech who came forward anonymously in 1999, the first sign that something was off came minutes after White re-entered the capsule. McDivitt, seated at the command console, said over private comms, "There's something on the window, outside. It's not debris, it's shaped." Control asked him to clarify, but McDivitt sounded distant, distracted. "No, it's gone. I think it moved." Then White whispered, "It was watching us." Control asked if they were experiencing visual distortions or reflections. They didn't respond. Then, as the capsule passed over the South Atlantic, the feed cut, not like a regular comm dropout. There was still a carrier signal, but no voices, only a low-pitched static, almost like breathing. Audio engineers later said it wasn't electronic noise. There were patterns, a rhythm, like speech, slowed down, almost melodic. Whispering, but with no language they could recognize. When the signal returned, McDivitt's tone was changed, tense, quiet. "Something was out there," he said, "We didn't imagine it." The rest of the mission proceeded in silence. Minimal chatter, no mention of anomalies in official reports. But after landing, both astronauts were quarantined longer than planned, privately debriefed, and never allowed to speak publicly about that lost hour. Years later, when asked in a taped interview if he had seen a UFO, McDivitt responded, "I saw something. I know it wasn't ours. That's all I'll say." White never spoke of it again. What's disturbing is what surfaced much later, long after both men were gone. In 1986, a NASA contractor digitizing old mission reels found a mislabeled tape from Gemini 4. It was flagged for deletion. But curiosity won. The footage was dark. A camera pointed out the capsule's rear-facing window during orbit. At first, nothing. Then around 13 minutes in, something passed behind the Earth. A shape, long, curved, unnaturally smooth, almost like a fin or a wing, but without movement. It cast no shadow. And it didn't tumble like debris. It glided. A faint knocking could be heard soon after. Once, twice, then 3 slow taps. The tape was reportedly confiscated by federal agents within 24 hours. The employee who discovered it was let go, but he shared a brief audio clip before disappearing from the public eye. In it, a voice, possibly white, whispers, "Don't let it in." Then silence. Just over a year later, Ed White died in the tragic Apollo 1 fire. Officially, it was caused by an electrical fault in a pure oxygen environment. But those close to the investigation reported something strange. White's final journal recovered from his locker included a torn page. On it, scrawled in pencil, were the words, "It followed us back." NASA buried the page. The family never saw it. But a photo of the note was leaked in 2007, then quickly scrubbed from forums. Too quickly. As for McDivitt, he turned down command of Apollo 13, citing medical reasons. But colleagues said he became obsessed with background noise, collecting radio interference, static recordings, shortwave anomalies. At night, he'd sit alone, headphones on, listening to nothing, or at least what we call nothing. In one rare quote before his death, McDivitt said, "Everyone worries about signals we send out into the universe, but no one asks what might already be here, already watching." To this day, Gemini 4 remains a proud moment in NASA history. The first spacewalk, another step toward the moon. But those 107 missing minutes, they're not archived, not forgotten, just removed, and maybe for good reason. If you made it to the end, you're one of the brave ones. Like and subscribe, because the deeper we dig, the darker it gets. So, what do you think? Are these just strange coincidences? Or is there something NASA doesn't want us to know? One thing's for sure. Space isn't just cold and dark. It's hiding something. I'm disturbing Jack. And that was what NASA won't tell you about space. Sleep tight, if you can.